Now that the world is getting back to some sort of normality, and by that we mean more countries are opening up to travelers again, people are almost certainly going to be taking advantage after being locked in their own countries for nearly 2 years. Today, we're looking at how to stay safe when traveling during the pandemic, so stay with us to find out all you need to know. So what is the current situation around the world? Some countries' responses to the initial outbreak were better than others, with places like South Korea implementing a quarantine of all incoming flight passengers almost immediately. This was in stark contrast to the UK, who dithered for almost a year before putting any sort of plan into action regarding quarantine measures. As a result, Korea's management of the pandemic was much easier to handle, while the virus ran rampant in Britain, with more than 50,000 cases per day at one point last winter. With the rollout of vaccines globally, countries have started to get a grip on the crisis, but with the emergence of new strains, we're not out of the woods yet. But as scientists make new breakthroughs in relation to the vaccines, we can afford to start looking ahead to a world without COVID, tentatively. So let's talk about staying safe while you travel. First up is an obvious one. Stay with us. Masks, while not offering full protection, are obviously better than nothing when we are talking about transmitting the virus. Anything we can do to minimize the spread is obviously a good thing. Some countries, like Peru for example, have a 2-mask mandatory policy on public transport, airplanes, buses, etc. While this may seem a little extreme, it may offer a little more protection, so why not? Wearing a mask limits how far the droplets can travel when you exhale, so if everyone is wearing one, it will obviously limit exposure. It is important to remember that when in public, your mask only offers you protection when it is over your nose and mouth, not situated on your chin. We understand that they can be a little uncomfortable, but you don't know the status of the person sitting next to you on the bus, so keep that mask covering both your nose and your mouth. How do you feel about masks when you're outside? Let us know below. And no arguing now, guys. Choose your accommodation wisely. It is important to stay in a place that promotes safe COVID practices. If you don't use Airbnb, it might be a good idea to check out the website, as it offers you the use of private citizens' houses and apartments, most of the time when they are not there. If you cannot afford to stay alone in a whole apartment on your own and use hostels regularly, then look for signs that they use deep cleaning. If you're unsure, or they don't say this on whatever website you're using to book, consider ringing them first in advance to double check. Also ask them how often they practice deep cleaning. The higher end places will almost certainly have a very good cleaning system, so if you can afford it, it might be worth staying in, somewhere a little more expensive for peace of mind. Where do you prefer to stay when you're traveling? Hostels or hotels? Next, another obvious one. Washing your hands with a soap with an alcohol percentage of more than 60% will kill almost anything living on your hands. Not only will it stop COVID from spreading, it will massively lower your chances of flu and other airborne viral diseases. Next up, let's minimize touching stuff. Stay tuned. Airports, buses, and other public places in general are a hotbed for COVID. If you cannot avoid these places altogether, try to minimize what you're touching. Coronaviruses can live on surfaces for hours or even days after leaving the body. When you touch something, the virus can quite easily then be transferred onto your hands. Think about how often you touch your face throughout the day. If you touch something in a public place, do not touch your face afterwards and go straight to the nearest bathroom so you can wash your hands thoroughly. Another obvious one next. Vaccines. As we know, vaccines have wiped out loads of diseases down the years, thanks to science. And while the COVID vaccine is not 100% just yet, it is obviously better than nothing. If you are going to travel, you should definitely consider being vaccinated. Not only for your own health, but a lot of airlines won't let you on the plane if you're not vaccinated nowadays, so it is more or less imperative for traveling. While we can still carry and spread the virus when vaccinated, it will seriously reduce our chances of not getting ill, so it is definitely worth it. Are you fully vaccinated? Let us know in the comments section. We're talking boarding passes and passports next. Stick around. Border guards and security in airports will often take your documents from you to physically inspect them. They are doing this hundreds, if not thousands of times per day, and are obviously at high risk. Usually, what these guys say goes in airports, but if you ask them and explain your worries about contracting COVID, they should let you hold the documents up for inspection or scan them yourself without the Border Patrol guards actually touching it. If you ask nicely, there is no reason why they would not let you do this, so remember your manners. Car travel's up next. If you are planning on doing an overland trip, this is a great way to minimize contact with the outside world while meaning you are still out and about. On your journey, try to make as few stops as possible, as service stations and rest stops see lots of foot traffic throughout the day and will more than likely see at least one infected person. Consider making your lunch before you leave for the day and eating it in the car, or even pull over for a nice view somewhere while you eat your lunch. If you don't want to make your lunch, maybe choose a drive-through option to limit contact with people. When filling up your car with gasoline, don't forget to disinfect the pump with an antibacterial wipe. We're talking crowds next. Stay tuned. As we know, COVID is an airborne disease, so being in a place which is is populated with a ton of people is obviously not going to do you any favors. While there are studies that show that the virus does not spread easily when outdoors in natural sunlight, it probably still isn't worth taking the risk, especially if you fall into one of the vulnerable categories. Places like town squares are places a lot of people tend to gather, so be vigilant. There will be more than likely someone in your vicinity who is infected, and you might end up touching a surface by accident and not realizing. Even though the UK and other countries are fully open again now, they're still registering thousands of cases per day, so you wouldn't even have to be unlucky to come into contact with someone who has COVID at a big event. You would be statistically more likely to than not. It's not worth the risk, so give it a wide berth. Contactless payment now. Stay with us. Similar to the border passes and passports in the airport, one thing you might want to consider is setting up a contactless card to limit your contact with cash and touching other people's hands. This will obviously limit your exposure to the virus and keep you safer. Once you return to your hotel, also consider cleaning off your bank card with an alcohol wipe, just in case that pesky virus has been living on the card reader. Next, we're talking about testing if you feel sick. Stick around. If you happen to feel under the weather when you're on your travels, it's important to go and find a medical facility and get tested straight away while limiting your exposure to the general public. This won't help you particularly, but it will help stop the spread of the virus and speed up the process of getting rid of it once and for all. There are places set up in almost every country which will provide you with a PCR test in a matter of hours, so there's no excuse not to get one. In most countries, you will be able to find your nearest testing center on Google. Failing that, ask a taxi driver to take you to a testing center, but obviously warn them first and keep your mask over your nose and mouth. Last but not least is the all-important medical insurance. Although this won't protect you on your travels, it'll certainly protect your pocket should you get sick while you're away, especially if you're from or in a country where you have to pay for health care. If you happen to be American or from another country where healthcare is a for-profit, it is imperative that you sign up to a legitimate insurer before you leave, as if you have to return for treatment without insurance, it can cost you thousands and thousands, which is scandalous, but it's just how it is. Where is the first place you'll be traveling to when you decide it's safe for you to travel again? Let us know below. As always, thanks for tuning in today, and remember to stop by next time for some more revelations. Bye, guys.